an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 2, Episode 9. When do I get to spend time with Josh? In this episode, Rebecca and Josh are apparently a thing again. I guess the most concerning part of this episode, and they were smart to do this, was to have Daryl sell more than half the firm because he didn't think things through. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you, first of all, to Megan for commissioning this episode. I just finished a live watch on it, and I can understand why this was one that she wanted to see my reaction. This is probably one of the weirder episodes of the show. It's weird for a number of reasons. First of all, there's a very specific style of of musical number in which all of the employees are very suspicious of the new guy. And it's done in such a way that I'm not, again, this always is a weird thing for me where I'm like, I think they're referencing something, either something very specific or an overall genre. Overall genre, I could see just being basic Broadway stuff, because it's it's so overly theatrical and so strangely set up. But I feel like there's a song in particular that maybe this was meant to be a bit of a spoof on, and I'm just not getting it. So that musical number was just so odd. There's also the fact that Rebecca is now with Josh and in what seems to be a kind of normal relationship, which I didn't see coming at all. I didn't think this was going to happen so quickly. And it's a kind of a surreal thing to, on this show, after all this time, sort of feel like you've accidentally fallen backward into Rebecca's deepest desire of her heart. This is not the whole thing with the soup fairy just felt like such a one-off moment of just, well, I'm almost over my ex, but I saw him this one time and I couldn't help but do this little thing because I'm not completely over him, and I saw the chance and I thought it might reignite a little bit of the obsession, but I sure didn't think it was going to lead to the two of them actually being together. And there's a sense to this, for Rebecca too, of her just not expecting this to have turned into what it has. So that's extremely weird. And then naturally, the whole point of the number that I thought was so strange is to talk about adding this new dude into the mix at this point in the show. I don't know how to feel about it. On the one hand, I really get what they're trying to do here, because The Office has been, so far this season, very much like a backdrop to things that are happening that have nothing to do with work. We never seem concerned about the fact that Rebecca is constantly calling out, that she can kind of just show up when she feels like it. And there needs to be conflict there. There needs to be there needs to be a foil to the easygoing attitude. And we have had that with other law firms coming in, with her old nemesis. And even when when Trent is in her apartment and they're talking about how I don't even remember what it is. They're talking about, they're talking about some school that's kind of Ivy League, but technically not Brown or something. And she's like, why even go to college? Just join the Navy. So we've had little moments of there being huge snobs on this show. But I think it's probably smart to add a snob that's around all the time, because that was part of what was funny initially about Rebecca showing up, was realizing that nobody here was interested in the kind of work culture that she expected. And now she has also grown to be uninterested in that. And we need a reminder of what being a lawyer actually means for a lot of people. And also, I think just low-key a reminder that she has a job. Because, like, other than seeing her talking to Paula at work, we have not really had a lot of Rebecca in the workplace, you know? So this feels like the show pulling away a little bit. I don't want to say pulling away from personal stuff, but going back into a bit more of a work-focused story, because previously the ensemble had been Josh and Josh's friends and Valencia, and we would see them as a group. But now, and Greg. But now Greg has moved away. Her and Josh are like kind of together, and White Josh is like with Daryl. And so it doesn't seem like they get together in a big group that often. And we need another sort of ensemble. And so having it be the office staff makes a lot of sense. And we'll see if I'm right about this at all. But I feel like they're realizing that the group situational humor is where the show tends to really shine. And they have created a couple of scenarios that keep that from really being possible with her personal friends anymore, unless something else were to change. So let's see. Erica says, yay, Nathaniel. Cornell, thank you, Erica. Claire says, I kind of love that they suddenly bring back real life like this, like having to actually be at work on time and do work. So many shows just never do that. Yeah, and I was a little bit waiting for it, because they have done that in this show with Rebecca specifically. Like a couple of little moments of just being like, oh, hey, remember, you don't have any money because you've just been spending it insanely. So how about we talk about the fact that you're broke now? But it never really lasts, you know? It's like one episode and then all of a sudden she's flush again and has nothing to worry about. It feels like this is going to be an ongoing issue with Nathaniel, and everybody being worried about keeping their job, I think, is going to add another layer to things, because so far everyone has been Rebecca showed up uptight. Everyone else got her to cool off and chill by demonstrating their own profound ambivalence to their own jobs and this assurance that they have job security and they're fine. And so she sort of took a cue from them and realized that that was true. And now everybody's attitude is going to have to change and become a little more urgent, or maybe it doesn't, and that's the problem. Because this is something that I run into, and Rashawn and I have talked about this a lot, like the lack of urgency that some people have, despite the fact that you think it's very clear shit's getting real right now and we should all be like sitting up and trying a little harder and paying a little more attention. I could definitely see Rebecca feeling like, I did so much to fucking save your jobs and you guys clearly are not even like trying to do better or anything, you know? It's really hard when you have gotten into a routine of taking a job for granted, when you've gotten into a routine that's like, I'm working at about 60%. It's hard to suddenly bump that shit up to 80%, never mind 100%. And I could see that breeding a little bit of resentment if this were to be a show that focused on the workplace more. And just like an overall sense of paranoia. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself as usual. So let's start off this episode. We have Rebecca helping Paula put the groceries away. The house is looking like cleaner than it has, I feel like, since we've ever been at Paula's house. And Paula asks Rebecca to deal with this issue. And she points to the corner. And there is a pile of gifty crap that Josh has been sending her. Guys, I know I say this all the time. I love this show so much because the way Josh is choosing to try and woo her and what he's using to do it is so profoundly high school. Like, it is a crazy how, and the thing is, if it were any other guy, I'd really feel like, you are phoning it in, buddy. Are you even trying? Like, come on. But we know Josh. And like, this is Josh turning it up. This is him really trying. And I've said this to Owen, and God bless him. He is just so good at this. I have like no tolerance for little tchotchke gifts like this that are not meaningful to me in any way. Like, you just saw a teddy bear and you were like, yeah, that's cute. Let me do that. It means love. It's holding a heart. What am I going to do with this? I'm not somebody who like keeps cute little keepsakes in a shelf somewhere. Like, I have stuff that I specifically choose for the aesthetic of it, but this sort of thing, it doesn't mean anything. So when I first started talking to Owen, I think I said something to him about how, like, for me, if you want to get me something on Valentine's Day, just make sure if it's chocolate that it's like nice chocolate. If you're going to get me a stuffed animal, rethink that probably. The kinds of things that, like, you know, you're going to come across in 4 or 5 years stuffed in the back of a drawer or your closet and be like, oh, that's right. You gave this to me. And you're going to feel like, I don't want to throw this away, but you don't want it either. And I really just, that's so in character for Josh. This whole spread of just crap. There's a giant teddy bear that's holding a balloon that says, you're so special. Then there's like a stuffed unicorn with a little heart-shaped balloon in its hand. There's like several what look like mugs with like bows on them and there's just lots of balloons. There's like a music box thing that's got like one of those shaker balls on the top of it. A box of chocolates, a small box of something that's like pink wrapped. There's even like a bottle of what looks like bubbles, like that you blow. It is a strange assortment of stuff that I think he really feels is thoughtful and cute. And none of it has anything to do with Rebecca is the thing. And that's what I meant when I was saying I talked to Owen about this. I put a lot of thought into gifts that I get people. I do a little reconnaissance, finding out what they have already, finding out what they're thinking of getting themselves, finding out favorite colors, all this sort of stuff, because I want to make sure to get somebody a present that is going to be something useful or specific enough that it feels like I could never have given this to anybody else and it would have made sense. I don't like receiving a gift that feels like this could have been for literally any woman, usually, in your life. Like when, you know, you have in-laws maybe, or uncles, or anybody in your family who doesn't know you super well. And at Christmas, they always get you, excuse me, I hit my mic. They always get you one of those baskets of like bath products. And it's like, just like from a shelf in Walmart that's like gifts for women. And they don't need to know anything about you because they're just going to pick a basket that looks cute. And that's the sort of thing that if you are an uncle that doesn't know me very well, I will be perfectly grateful to accept a gift like that because you don't know me and that's the best you could do. And that's fine. But if you are somebody close to me and you get me stuff like that, it really feels like you either made no effort or you don't know me the way that I thought you did, which will then make me feel kind of bad. So anyway, I know I'm going off way too much on this tangent, but it's such a small thing, this shot that the camera takes of all this stuff, but I just feel like it tells us so much about Josh and who he is and the way he sees dating. And it's so immature. And that comes up more as this episode continues. And I've been saying, and I feel like we're starting to get there, Rebecca's going to start to realize that maybe they don't have a lot in common, actually. So, Erica says, oh, wait. Claire says, I had an ex who would give me tons of crap like that, and I hated it. Such a relief to throw it all out after we broke up. Exactly. It's like, I'm getting you something because I want the credit of buying a gift, but I don't want to actually put any effort into it. I want the points from it, but I don't feel like earning the points is how it feels to me. Erica says, it sounds like an amalgamation of holiday stuff I used to get as a kid. Bubbles on Easter, candy on Christmas, just whatever was in the seasonal aisle at Walgreens. Exactly. So it turns out, and Paula says, I love the line, it looks like a children's cancer ward in here. Why are you not running into his arms? It's been a week and I eventually have to figure out how to do all of this on my own. So why are you really not calling Josh back? And Rebecca says, I'm scared. I don't know if I can trust him. I have seen him go through 3 girlfriends in a few months, and I could just be like a double rebound, essentially, which I am super proud of Rebecca for coming to this conclusion when Josh has been handed to her on a silver platter, that she is being cautious enough to think this through. I didn't expect that. I will say, though, I was so disappointed in Paula's response to that, because when, like, after she says, what if I'm the rebound? Paula says, do you still love him? And she says, yeah, she says, the answer. And Paula says, then that's all that matters, right? And I can't agree with that assessment. And I feel like that wording is going to come and bite Paula in the ass, because she kicked her husband out, and I think she's going to find that whether or not you still love somebody, that's not all that matters. Like, I get what she's saying. And it's, again, in character. Rebecca and Paula have been a perfect storm of 2 uber romantics feeding on one another. So it makes sense that Paula would have this, like, oh, all you need is love sort of attitude, because we saw this throughout season 1 of her really being like, the 2 of them are meant to be. But we know, and I don't mean us as viewers, I mean us as people, love is not all you need. You can love a person and be really bad for each other. You can love a person and abuse them. You can love a person and manipulate them. You can love a person and be absolutely toxic to them. That is 1,000% true, and 100% what I believe is going on between her and Josh. Josh has come running to Rebecca, throwing this at her, I believe, not because he loves her, but because he wants somebody to take care of him in his life, and he doesn't like being single. So, I mean, Josh is a quintessential dude. Rebecca moves in with him at some point, and she, like, and I mean really moves in. I don't mean like what they had going on before, where he, like, lived in her house and she was doing everything to try and impress him and get him to actually commit. I'm saying, what if they actually moved in together, trying to have a partnership, sort of like a real place of their own? I think she's going to realize real fucking quick how completely incapable Josh is of taking care of himself and to the standard that one would expect an adult to take care of themselves. And we know he's lived alone before because Valencia moved into his apartment with him. But honestly, when we look, and I think it might just be like the convenience of the story, when we look at the state of Josh's life, I don't know how he afforded an apartment before. I don't remember what he used to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if going to visit his apartment before Valencia moved in, it was a bit of a horror show. Because a lot of guys just are raised being taken care of and raised to expect to find someone else to eventually take care of them. They are not raised to take care of themselves. And society really teaches boys that if they don't take care of themselves, it's just kind of amusing and just sort of an expected thing. Well, you know, he's a guy, he's a bachelor, so he just, the place is just a mess and he doesn't cook because, you know, he's a guy who lives alone. What does he care? And it's amazing how different the standard is for a woman living alone. You know, it's just so different. So yeah, I'm waiting for that to kind of come around. Oh, right. Thank you. Kristen says he worked in his dad's radiology lab. Thank you. I forgot about that. I was like, I know that we heard about him, you know, getting this job because of Rebecca's help. I couldn't remember what it was that he did. I assumed he moved from New York into his parents' house and then he and Valencia moved in together. No, because I'm pretty sure he had the apartment and asked her to move in with him at his place. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember that happening when he asked her to move in, that it was like into the place that he was already living. And she was pretty much immediately thinking about like trying to find somewhere else that was bigger, better, whatever. But anyway, Paula goes to the door and she opens the door and Josh comes right to the door. And it turns out that he has been standing out there for 3 days straight. And it's one of those moments where, again, I think he really means it. I think he means well. I'm not trying to say that he's like manipulating her right now. And her expression when he comes in, this is not the expression of a girl who is delighting in tormenting a guy. Because, listen, we know when that's happening, right? We've seen our friends do it. We have done it. Where we're just like, I kind of like watching you dance now, though, because you fucked with me. And now all of a sudden you want me back. And I'm sorry, but I'm low-key going to just like, I'm going to enjoy this for a second. That's super not what's happening. She is looking at him like she wants so bad to believe what the fuck he's saying to her. And she just doesn't really, you know. And he tells her he understands why she doesn't trust her, or why she doesn't trust him, but that it's going to be different. We'll start over. We'll do things the right way. And Paula goes up to him and tells him, if you hurt her, I will kill you. And she has the crazy eyes when she says that, and it's pretty good. So Rebecca runs up to him and kisses him, and I guess they're back together. And I was just kind of like, fine. And then we get the montage of the two of them having their West Covina romance. I really enjoy this a lot, guys. It was awful, but it's so great to have this revisited, her arrival here. And it's incredibly sappy and just I'm just gonna skip right over that because it's the worst. But eventually we get to the two of them on the couch cuddled up together in pajamas, and he's calling into work, and it turns out that they are going to be going to Raging Waters together. And that's why he's calling in. It appears like she hasn't even called in. That isn't even what's happened. She is just not going in and assumes that nobody's really going to care. And then checks her phone and realizes that there are 37 missed calls. So she asks him if on their way they can stop and she can go in and check and make sure everything's okay. And when they go inside, there's already this meeting underway and everybody has a very serious expression on their face. And there's some dude sitting at the head of the conference table in the power seat, as it were. Pardon me, guys. I'm so chilly and I'm trying to get this blanket. There we go. This dude tells her that she's 25 minutes late and that is not going to fly here anymore. And we find out that this guy's name is Nathaniel Primple, something. And his family, Plimpton. Thank you, Erica. Oh my God, Plimpton. What a terrible name. All it makes me think of is Luna Lovegood and the Freshwater Plimpies. So his family has bought a 50% stake in the firm. And later on we find out that there was or they bought like I think Daryl had a 50% stake. They bought 50% of his, and then they bought his wife's. So Daryl winds up finding out later that he is not actually like co-owner anymore. They outweigh him now. Nathaniel outweighs him now. And it's just a terrible moment because Daryl is such a sweet cinnamon roll that as soon as you hear that he sold half, like his share of the firm, that he did not check the fine print, that he didn't do his due diligence, that he didn't think it through, in short. You know that some shit is going to go very, very wrong. And sure enough, when he gets basically elbowed out, he is like, when Rebecca first says, Daryl, what did you do? His response is, look, I have expenses. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, fair. But I mean, he says something like he made a very generous offer. And whenever I hear that sort of thing, I'm just like, did you take his first offer, though? And if you were going to do something like this, Daryl, why wouldn't you have Rebecca represent you and check on everything first? Because you know that she is better than you at these things. You know it, sweetie. I love you, and I'm not trying to insult you, but, like, you're bad at this a lot of the time. And maybe just, like, have a buddy here and checking up on stuff. That's all I'm saying, you know? So it hurts because you know this is going to go left, and it's just a matter of time. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. And he has been taken advantage of so badly. And all I can hope for is that there will come a time when Rebecca is able to rescue the firm from these people. But saying that, I do think this kind of conflict is going to be essential for the show. So I want her to elbow them out because I want that victory. But I also kind of don't want Nathaniel to go, even though he's awful, because he works really well in the scheme of things. So we get this moment where she confronts him about the fact that he is expecting everybody to work 60 hours a week. He wants like daily reports, just all the stuff that she tried to get away from. And she tells him that you are what I came here to escape. And then tells him that she quits, and he does not have much to say to that. And she's like repeating herself because he just told her, I was thinking you were going to be the most competent one here. But when she says I quit and he doesn't have a reaction, she pushes it. And then he's like, well, I mean, that's fine. That's like only 4 people left that I have to fire today. And that gets her attention. She is willing to sacrifice her own job because she knows I am very good and I will be able to get a job at another firm, no problem. But when it comes to everybody else also being on the line, this is a whole different situation. And he tells her that they need to find $250,000 in their budget or everybody is going to be getting the axe. He says 5 people total, if not her. And it's, of course, all people that we know, including Paula. Even though that seems like the entire office, because pretty much that's only people that I know of on this show. I don't know how they buy like a firm and then just completely eradicate that firm and have it still function. I mean, I guess that they could fire people and then rehire those exact same people at a reduced salary, which has been done. Such a gross tactic. But yeah, so she realizes that she is going to need to dedicate the rest of this day to finding new clients. We have that weird musical number where they're all very suspicious of him. And she has to tell Josh that she can't go with him today, even though he took the day off, yada, yada, yada. And this is the kind of thing that is a make or break in a relationship. And I'll be very interested to see if at the end of this, she has told him the truth and she really isn't going to keep canceling on him, because now she's working in an office like the one that she had left, or at least aiming to be like the one that she had left. And she has saved everyone's jobs, but he is still expecting her to work 60 hours a week. And that is a considerable uptick, I assume, from what looks like was a maybe 30-hour week job. And it's one thing to be working a 60-hour week when you are married to or partnered with somebody else who is very career-oriented and understands your goals and also has their own things going on. But if you are working that kind of job and you are with somebody who is in a very reasonable 40 hours, a job that they don't take home with them, that's like one of the primary things. It is really difficult for people who work a regular, and I'm saying that in quotes, a regular 40-hour leave it at work kind of job to understand what it's like when you work and do something like this. And it's part of why I think like a lot of actors date one another. It's like, other people who are on these crazy schedules that are going to understand not being able to see each other months out of the year. I know that, people who have gotten involved with doctors and work regular hours, that it can be a shock realizing that they are just on call all the time and not necessarily available when they say they're going to be. Owen works, 55 hours a week because he works for his family that owns a business. And it just works out that I have a job that works really weird hours and I have a lot to do. So even when it sucks, when he's like, I'm going to be home really late tonight, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to miss you, there is a part of me that's like, oh, but I'm really behind on postcards. Oh, I have to do this. There's always something that I can fill that time with. But Rebecca's dating Josh. I mean, Josh is going to, I don't think he's going to cope well with that. Josh is like, he dated Valencia, who was like a yoga instructor, and that was what she did. So she must have had very easy hours. I'm not saying that like yoga instructors don't work hard. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But I'm just saying that yoga places aren't open at 1 a.m. She's going to have daytime hours and be home a lot in the evening. And he dated Anna, who has a brow place that's open during the day and closed at night. Rebecca, whole different animal. And I don't think he's going to like this, And I don't think he's going to get it either. So, we'll see how this goes. All right, jumping ahead, that scene where Nathaniel is talking to Daryl about like how he has 2 like liquid locally sourced protein drinks and then a no carb dinner. It is really uncomfortable. I hate it so much. And he's got what looks to me like an insulin pump, but he says it's like just meant to track, his intake of, reports my carb intake, which I guess is sort of like glucose monitoring. But anyway, he's talked about throughout the episode as being like ridiculously good looking. He is fine. And I often find this to be the case. I don't find the guys that are supposed to be hot on a lot of shows hot. And I think it's because, for me, being attracted to somebody has so much to do with personality. It just outweighs so much else for me. That when a guy is a dick or seems boring, I can't see them as attractive anymore. So this guy comes off as such a complete douchebag. So immediately, and he's got this look to him with the hair and everything. He's just everything that I hate about the frat boy sort of vibe, like grown up. And so they kept talking about him being like just so good looking and so symmetrical and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, I guess it's just, I mean, I'll go with it for y'all's sake, but I don't agree. We see some scenes of Rebecca trying to get some new clients, and she's really hoeing herself out a little bit, talking about how if they want to know sexual details about her life, they have to employ her first, talking up the fact that she is, that she's got big tits, and later on says something about how there's no bra Fridays, etc. It's a real indicator of Rebecca being very willing to compromise her principles, which, I mean, that you need to be able to do if you're going to be a lawyer and you want to be like to make money, and that's your primary goal, is to make money and not help people, not fight for justice. You can't have principles that are unbendable. I mean, later on she even talks about how this club that these guys run only allows in men and doesn't, like, I think she says, and because of my heritage, so I'm assuming she means because I'm Jewish, I wouldn't be allowed in. And she's like giving them a real like pat on the back, good job about that. And it's moments like this that I actually really like Rebecca more, to see her really do something that you know is like kind of despicable without turning a hair at all. You know, she's just completely like, no, this is what I have to do for my job, and I do it, and I don't apologize for it at all. This is part of what it is. And while I don't think I could live like that, I really appreciate how much she has come to terms with that aspect of the job. She is not conflicted about having to do this. She just sees this as a necessary evil. And as far as saving all of her friends' jobs, it's just no contest. She absolutely is willing to make this sacrifice for them. And I think that is just really sweet. The main thing that happens here, though, that gets into her head, R.E. Nathaniel, is that he is making fun of Josh all the time. And there's a couple of moments here. First of all, he asks if Josh is the guy who's here to flip the water cooler. Later on, he calls him like Mr. Flip Flop or something like that. Just keeps on sort of nudging Rebecca about the fact that she has low standards and that the guy she's with, she should maybe be embarrassed about. And this is one of those awful things that you can think in the moment it doesn't affect you, but it's pretty hard for comments like this to totally not penetrate your brain. Like, even if it's from somebody that you kind of despise, there are times where you really can laugh it off and be like, oh, no problem. I don't care what you think. If you think that this is a bad thing, I think anything that's the opposite of what you like is probably good. But when it's somebody who kind of comes from a background that's similar to yours, because Nathaniel's like Ivy League, has money, is, you know, a WASP, which is not what she is, but it's similar enough. They are privileged, they are white, they have like intense educations and come from snobby families. When you have something that's like sort of historically been the way your family sees something, and somebody makes a comment that really feels like something that your mom would say, as much as you may want to laugh it off, it can be really hard to not let it get to you. And it begins to. It's interfering with her and Josh having sex, like she's trying to get into it and she can't stop talking about Nathaniel. They go to dinner with Josh's family, his parents, and his dad is so funny. Fuck. I forgot how like completely devoid of expression his dad is. And Nathaniel comes, and she thinks that he's spying on her, but he says it's because it's the only good place in town to get a steak that is, he says, the only place that doesn't serve a steak that's stuffed with cheese. And when he realizes that it's bothering her, he turns around and just sits full on watching her while having his cocktail, letting her know that he is judging her. And it's awful because, like, Rebecca does this thing, and it's one of those moments where I'm just like, can't you just explain to them what's going on? Because Josh already knows, and, like, granted, Josh is irritated by this guy, but I'm like, I feel like this would be better than what she winds up doing. If she had said to Josh and his family, okay, so I'm sorry I'm acting really weird, but my law firm just got bought out. And the guy who bought us out, who is a huge jerk, is sitting over there watching us. And what if Josh and his parents turned and stared right back at him and just made him really uncomfortable? I feel like she could have turned the tables power-wise pretty easily there by embarrassing him for being such a dickhead. But instead, she lets him get in her head about Josh. And so we see Josh, like, talking at the table, and her hearing him say, like, blah, 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 puka shell, blah, 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 intensive purposes, which is my favorite thing. That kind of stuff gets in my head. I hate it. I hate it. Owen is really good about that. And I don't think, as much as it's an elitist, shitty attitude, I don't think I could take it, guys. If he was somebody who said intensive purposes, or who said supposedly, you know, I like, the one thing that he'll say occasionally is today went pretty good. And I'm just like, you mean it went well? Today went pretty well. Come on. And even, it's not a big deal, but I still, guys, grammar, it just fucking gets to me. And it shouldn't. It's elitist. It's classist. It's shitty. I just, it bothers me. So she kind of snaps at him when he says something about how we haven't even gotten our amuse bushes yet. And she's like, oh my God. Bites his head off about it. And then, like, just leaves the table. And understandably is a little bit worried that Josh might not forgive her later. I say understandably. I mean, understandably, Rebecca is worried. I, as a viewer, it didn't even occur to me that he would hold this against her permanently. He knows that this is a crazy situation that's going on with her right now. But yeah, I mean, guys, what have I been saying since the start of this whole thing? Rebecca and Josh do not have very much in common. And that can work sometimes, but I feel like it is something that she has been, like, in big denial about. And it's going to start to become more and more apparent. And there are going to be a lot of things about him that she has seen as really kind of, like, endearing that are going to fucking drive her bonkers. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And Erica says, hence why is the one that gets under my skin. Yeah, hence why. That's not how those go together. No. You would say, like, therefore, but hence why. Ew. Yeah, no. That doesn't work. I don't like it. So, okay, I'm backing up. There's a moment that I found really interesting where it's right after they have the interview with the new potential clients who are battling with a graveyard for a piece of land to expand onto. And she tells them that she thinks that cemetery is like double burying people to save on space, which is illegal, and that she can prove it, or that she thinks she'll be able to prove it and get them to back off. They go out of the office after this. And she is seeing this as a huge win. But Nathaniel is like, what is wrong with you people? 2 to 3 weeks from now, you may get a new client. But I told you Friday at 8 a.m. is the deadline, and you are just acting like I never said that. And Daryl says, deadline for what? And Rebecca says, it's a deadline that Nathaniel's obsessed with because his rich daddy said it. And he gets a real look on his face, and he says, pardon me? And she says, you have to admit you're a little obsessed. Sometimes it's like paging Dr. Freud, Oedipus needs his blankie. And he, like, this is a moment of anger from this actor that is not leavened with any comedy. Like, we have seen Paula get angry, but there's always a sort of like funny edge to it, except for the time when her and Rebecca were yelling at each other. It's rare that this show has totally unleavened anger or sadness. Always there is something in there that is a moment of amusement. And this dude has a look on his face of like, not only is he extremely angry, but he almost looks like he is going to cry. There's like that kind of look that you get around your eyes where they start to get a little red, where, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Sometimes when I get really angry, I get teary-eyed, which is infuriating. But that kind of rage that you are just like also in disbelief, you know, I cannot believe that you just fucking said that to me. Oh my God, I can't fucking believe you just said that to me, kind of thing. And that is the look he gets. And it is a lot. Like, for this show, it was pretty intense. And so when he like gets this look and then he looks over and says, what's that guy's name? I'm like, oh, oh, this is no good, sir. He's like a shark that just like saw a little bit of blood and was like, here we go. Of course, they both get his name wrong. It's George, but they call him Glenn. They call him Gene. And he has been fired. And then he gets this like tiny little solo about how nobody stands up for him, but nobody's going to interrupt him this time, which of course gets cut off. Poor George. So I feel this whole thing with his daddy is going to be a real problem coming up. I think this is going to be an ongoing theme, let's say, for Nathaniel. I mean, he tells Rebecca that she lost at one point and tells her to shower up, get the smell of the chlorine off, and come apologize to your father. And when she's like, what? He like seems to have no idea that he just said that to her. Can we talk about his water polo photo, guys? Oh my God, it's so... this show. Oh, the little touches. Right, so then we cut to the graveyard. Paula is doing the digging and finds 2 skulls and 4 leg bones and realizes that indeed they have been double burying people, but they get caught by security. And Rebecca winds up panicking as she hears them coming and runs away to the car, but Paula tries to scramble out of the hole and does not succeed. And comes to the car once it's daylight out, like Rebecca's just been sitting there all night, evidently, and had to bribe the night guardsman with a visit to the aquarium in order to get out of this without him pressing charges. So they go back to the office, and Rebecca tells Nathaniel that she has proof of exactly what she said was going on. And he is like, that's great. That's still not the actual client. You can get them, you say, but you don't have them. So this isn't, according to our deal, you have not come up, like, you haven't, held up your end. And at this point, Rebecca pretty much flips the fuck out. And first she pulls him off into the other room and tries to reason with him by appealing to his humanity. And that's a mistake, because this is not a guy who cares about other people. And then, when he makes it clear he has no intention of working with her on any of this, she grabs his fountain pen and begins to come at him because she's going to hurt him. And honestly, if this isn't just a total fantasy, I don't know what is. I mean, I am sure everybody listening to this has worked with a person that they were like, if I could just be allowed to physically assault you just like one time, I might be okay. It might be enough to calm me down and get past this. And you just have to bottle that up and just fantasize about decking them or, shoving them into the meat grinder or whatever it is. And they're in the middle of this wrestling match when the new clients come in to, sure enough, sign up with them. And it's pretty amazing. I said during the live watch that I was kind of convinced she would get the money. She would get the new client that, got them this amount of money. And in the end, they would get fired anyway. Because that is what I have seen happen so many times. It's like, well, we need to get to this quota. And then that we do get there. But, oh, well, we got the money. That's great. We want to keep that money, though. We don't want to give that to you. And I was pleased that Nathaniel actually holds up his end of the deal. That indicates a tiny bit of honor on his part in terms of, backing up his word. But we'll see. We'll see how long that goes. And I am just because he says your jobs are safe for now. I am waiting for this kind of crisis to happen again. Maybe more than once. So Rebecca goes, well, first she has tea with Paula, talking about the new dude and all of his evilness. Rebecca goes home and talks to Josh, who is very sulky and cranky. Guys, did you hear my cat just now? Jesus. And apologizes. And I appreciated this, that Josh is like, yeah, you were a real dick. You definitely owe my parents an apology. But I'm really glad that you kept your friends' jobs. Like, he recognizes that this wasn't just her being, like, career obsessed. This was her caring about other people and trying to help. And that is a valuable thing in a person. So I'm glad that the show went out of its way to make it clear that he gets that and appreciates that, because that's who Josh is also. He is a good-hearted guy who really just wants to help most of the time. So I needed him to understand that. I needed him to be on the same page as her regarding how important this all was. So I really enjoy how she asks him, once he has forgiven her, if he wants to get in their pajamas and cuddle up or just go to bed. And he says, go to bed. And then she says, how about I chase you and you run like I'm pretending to be really mad at you. A sexy, silly, fun game. Like, I'll chase you and you pretending that I want to kill you. It's amazing. It's like she kind of got off on what was going on with Mr. Nathaniel there. It's unclear to me whether it's just like the rush of being in power and being, she was like on top of him, very literally. Or if she's like, I'm kind of fantasizing about my hot new boss, which I'm like thinking it might be that. And I'm a little bummed about it. But I might be wrong. It might just be opening up a whole new purview for Rebecca, because she's never like physically attacked anybody before and realizes that it was pretty fun. And then we get the most awkward scene with Patton Oswalt Patton Oswalt is one of those that's like, I really tend to like him. He has made a couple of tweets in the past that I've been like, oh, Patton, don't. It's just, sweetie, shut up. No. But mostly he's pretty great. And when he is so often cast as this type of guy, he is almost always wearing a really kind of odd, like a short-sleeved uniform tends to be the thing. And an obsession with something very specific is also often a marker of one of his characters that he plays. And this scene when he's with Paula and he's telling her to touch all of the animals, they're at the aquarium. There is one of those like pools that you can actually reach into, and it's really meant for kids. But he's like, yeah, I want to touch the ray. And then he tells her to touch the urchin real slowly while keeping eye contact so that he can see the exact moment that her hand touches it. The intensity. I can't get over how well he does with these roles. Tell me what you feel. Speak from the heart. Don't lie or I'll know. And Paula says, it's sharp. And he says, it's sharp because they have little spikes and that's how they get food. This is awesome. I love this stuff so much. Let's go look at some coral, okay? And like runs away in a fit of like childlike enthusiasm that seems to kind of like get to Paula. Like, at first, she's just like, oh my God, you are so creepy. And then he goes left with this like little boy clapping his hands in excitement. And she's like, oh, okay, actually, that's adorable. I guess this is fun now. Maybe it's fine. And then the episode is over. And it's such an odd place to end things. And I don't know what to think. Claire says, fun fact, Patton Oswalt was a huge fan of the show and they basically wrote this role for him. That's what whenever he's in anything, it feels like he asked them to be on the show and they were like, well, we're going to write a real weirdo for you. He was in Justified. I don't know if you guys have watched that, but he plays like a character that you're just like, dude, oh God, this is so awkward. Also, he apparently improv the majority of his scenes here. Oh, that's really fun. I enjoy a good improv. Erica says, and Dollhouse. I forgot he was in Dollhouse. I haven't watched that in so long. Anyway, so that is the end of the episode. Let me check and see what we've got coming up for dates. Today is what? The 5th. The next one is the 19th. 23rd, 29, which is episode 12, and that is meant to be a voyeur. So the 29th, I'm going to be doing my watch and my record of episode 12. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys. Owen was not home in time to do the live watch with me, and I'm really excited for him to watch this episode. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me, and thank you to Megan for commissioning this and for commissioning the voyeur. Sorry that I got it wrong, but I'm glad that I was able to do a live watch after all. And I will be seeing you all again on the 19th with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.